Welcome to an I Exist podcast. Our entire mission can be summed up in one phrase: becoming all that we are. It is our belief that fulfillment doesn't come from changing into things you aren't, but rather from becoming everything that you already are. And ultimately, we're here to press and empower you to lead lives that are full of fulfillment. We've dedicated this specific podcast to the dream. Not to having the dream or even talking about the dream, but to living the dream. The reality is that there's a stark difference between having a dream and manifesting one. Here you'll gain insight and wisdom keys directly from some of the water walkers of our generation, dream practitioners, those who have decided to tread paths where there were none, to step out into only what they could see. Come take a peek into the minds of some who, from within, create our world's most magnificent realities. I'm the creator and host, Brian Farr, and this is the Living the Dream podcast. Listen, hello, and again, welcome to the 20th episode of Living the Dream, the podcast. I am your host, Brian Farr. I'm happy to be with you. I'm happy that you're joining me today on what is the final episode of the first season of Living the Dream, the podcast. I've enjoyed every single one of the podcasts. I've enjoyed all of the guests. Shout out and thank you to everyone who has joined me as a guest on this podcast. We have more to come, more to look forward to. I can't wait to continue to ramp up what is already such a gorgeous foundation, such a great foundation. I appreciate everyone who has listened for this to be such a young podcast. The amount of downloads and listens, which exceed over 600 at this point, without much extensive marketing and pushing in that direction, lets me know that not only is this something that I will continue to enjoy doing, but that it's needed somewhere for someone. And so I appreciate you listening. I appreciate all of you who have shared it. Thank you for the ratings. Thank you for the support on any level, if that's you who has supported. I want you to continue to support. Consider supporting in other ways through the Patreon. You can do so by becoming a monthly financial partner at patreon.com/Brian Farr. Again, we have so much to do, so much to look forward to. There's also added benefit to becoming a patron, and you'll see all of the benefits there. If you have not rated the podcast, go ahead and do so. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and do so on your favorite or platform of your choice. And without further ado, I want to jump straight into the subject matter on today. I will not be on here long, but I just wanted to sort of top off some of what I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And as always, if you have not heard the last two podcasts at least, you'll want to catch up on those so you have the greatest context for what I'm saying today. And go back and listen to the ones that you've missed if you haven't already. Again, all of it is great content. I will always tell you that because it's always been true every time I've said it. So last week in particular, in the previous week, I've been talking a good bit about the need to make progress in order to not only feel fulfilled, but to see the fulfillment of your dream or dreams. Progress is such a vital key. Now, last week in particular, I talked about why it's important that we do not need to carry a fear of failure along the way, because you're not going to know every single step you need to take along the way. Which means that a fear of the unknown, again, a fear of failure, will prevent you from taking the steps that you need to into the unknown so that you can find out not only who you are, but exactly which ways you should go and eventually come upon the right path. Now, I know that instinctively and from any general knowledge of yourself, from having to live with yourself for how many ever years before you actually begin a journey into becoming or stepping out into your dreams, of course, there are going to be things that you already have learned about yourself that will hopefully give you a general direction. But most of you, if not all of you, will not know every single step you should take along the way. And so a fear of stepping will always prevent your progress. A prevention of your progress will always lead to not only the feeling of unfulfillment, but it'll prevent your dream from actually coming into fruition. It's important to realize and know all of these things. Now, this podcast in particular, like I said, this won't be very long of a podcast, but this is not just for those of you who may have some inward insight into a general direction you should go. But for those of you who actually don't really know which direction to go in, not because you don't have any insight on yourself, but because what you know about yourself is that you could go in a number of directions and possibly be successful. And I'll state one more time that it's going to be very important to go back and listen to the last podcast in order to see why it's so important to get rid of the fear of failure before you can actually process what I'm about to say properly. You'll need the context. This can be for a lot of people, but more specifically for those of you who feel like you could go in a number of directions because maybe just through the vein of school or through different jobs, you found that you're good at a lot of different things. And so when it's come down to maybe gaining a little bit more control of your life or deciding to dance to the beat of your own drum, start living on your own terms to create the life you want, you kind of feel stuck because you don't quite know what direction to go in. And it's hard for you to take a lot of the advice that a lot of people give out who want to help you, because a lot of it seems like what they're saying is that your ability to focus and move forward towards your dream means that you need to only attack one thing. And I'm not going to say that anyone who has said that is necessarily wrong. It does take a great amount of focus and also singularity of vision in order to bring something about properly, such as a dream or a vision or a goal. But at the same time, I want you to consider a few things. One of the things that I want you to consider is that you do not know yourself in the way that you think and feel you know yourself. And I'll use this for an example. I've been put in many predicaments in my life in which it was almost a trial by fire type of effect. So me being thrown into a specific situation has led to things coming out of me that I did not know were there, both good and bad. There was a time that I didn't know that I could have any jealousy in me until I started dating who is now my wife. And certain interactions around other people, specifically other guys at the time, and this is something I had to grow past eventually, actually made something come out of me. Again, that something is jealousy that I didn't even realize was there until the predicament called it out of me or pushed it out of me or became a catalyst for that jealousy to show up. Now, that would be a negative example. But on the other side of it, there's other events that may not have been the best circumstances. I might have been extremely broke or without resources of any kind, or I might have felt like my back was against the wall in a certain way concerning feeling caged by others and controlled, or I should say them attempting to control me. And in those moments, a level of creativity would come out of me that I didn't realize was there. So let me give you another brief example. There could have been a situation in which I felt like I wanted to go through a specific door. And this is a theoretical door, meaning I could have wanted to work with a particular person or hope that I would get a specific job or be able to accomplish my dream through a specific career path or whatever. And when those doors were closed or I received a no from those people or those paths, I wouldn't give up on the dream. I would just have to figure out a new way to get it accomplished. And so those circumstances brought a level of creativity out of me that I wouldn't have known was there had I not been placed in predicaments to where I was told no, or where others could have eventually tried to hold me back or control me or make me dumb down who I am to fit their agenda or their comfortability, etc. Getting no's to specific doors that you would like to go through or that you thought were for you or whatever the situation is can often bring out a different level of creativity and willpower that you may not have known was there before. And so all in all, I want you to consider the idea that you don't know yourself like you feel like you do. There are certain positions that you can place yourself into that will really show you who you are. And I'll just say this last one because it's funny and it actually came to me. You know, a lot of us are very gangster, in private and when we're talking to our friends and things like that. And we watch TV and see things on the news and say things like, oh, I wish they would have done that to me. If they would have ran up on me with that gun or whatever the situation is, something that is actually probably a really traumatic event. We have all of these Bruce Lee type dreams of ourselves in which we would handle them a certain way and things like that. but I guarantee you'll know what type of man or woman you are if you're put in that predicament. And oftentimes you don't know yourself like you think you know yourself. So here's why I wanted you to think about that, to consider that. Because what I know for a fact is that as you begin to really step out, have faith, and to begin to walk out your dreams, you're going to discover that the well of who you are is very deep. And there's some things that you will not know about yourself, pieces of you, talents, gifts, abilities, levels of creativity, and honestly, some bad things, but we won't focus on those today. But as you journey along, you'll discover that you have more in you than you thought. There are some things that you won't find out about yourself until you're going along, you're traversing along, and you possibly get into a jam or something of the sort, and your dream actually requires it to come out of you. A new skill set will show itself. Again, a new level of creativity will begin to show itself, a new gift. Some of you don't believe you're salesmen at all. And until you begin to live your dream, begin to walk it out, begin to take the pathway to your dream. And at some point, because you're determined to see the dream through, when your dream requires that of you, it'll come out of you instantly. And what you thought was impossible, or what you thought was not a piece of you, or what you thought was not a part of you, will become a part of you in that moment and never leave you because you discovered that it was there. Some of you don't feel like you're good with language, linguistics, that you can speak to people. But if you get determined and begin to commit to your dream, there will possibly come a day in which you will be forced to at least try to speak. And your dream will put that demand on you, and you'll discover that you're a better speaker than you thought, that you're better at linguistics than you thought the entire time. Some of you have a capacity for languages in which you could travel to any country and learn a language much quicker than you thought you could. And it may be your dream to travel, but because you have not stepped out there and began to travel and chase that dream, pursue that dream, see that dream through, you don't know what a powerful and great gift you have for languages. These are all gifts in my book. But again, you will not know it's there until you commit to living the dream out. And some of the things that are scaring a lot of you from beginning to live your dream because of the part of you that doesn't feel like you're going to be good at a certain thing that the dream requires, you need to just step out into it. And you'll find out that if the dream be true, if it be yours for real, then what you thought may not be a part of you was a part of you all along. And so I want you to consider that. The second thing that I want you to consider is that you probably aren't just one thing. And so let me tell it to you this way. I think one of the things I've fought a lot of my what would be considered adult life is being capped by people's perception, perspective, and idea of what I should be or what I could be based upon how they knew me, how they saw me, what they viewed me as. And so without going into a whole lot of recalling my past, I do remember one moment in which I had taken a job for a particular thing that I was and am gifted at. It's a gift of mine, but it was just a part of me. It was just one gift. It was just one piece of me, I feel. And I remember going into the job, telling the powers that be there that I felt like I had a capacity for a lot more than what I was being hired for. Now, I'm not saying that it's their responsibility to necessarily even grow or allow me to produce in those areas within their organization, company, etc. But the reason why I mentioned it is because I felt like there may be room for growth within that company. And eventually, the more I went along, I felt more of a resistance to the rest of what I was. And because of that, I eventually ended up telling a couple people at least that when in that environment, I only felt like I could be 2% of myself. And after that, it seemed like at the time, no one wanted me to be beyond that 2%. Now, I didn't know how much I would be gifted at doing some of the other things I felt like I had a capacity for, but I just inwardly knew that I was a lot more than what I was able to present comfortably within that environment. Ultimately, personally, I've never allowed anybody to cap my potential, even if I've had to go a few more different routes to try to figure out how I could become, how I could do something. If I had to do it on my own, that's just what it had to be. And even then, at that time, I would never try to push too hard for people to allow me to do something I felt called to or felt inwardly that I could do within their space. I always took it upon my own self to practice, rehearse further my skill set, discover my potential, push towards what I felt like was purpose on the outside of any situation that I felt blocked in. And here's why I'm telling you that. What I've discovered along the way is that I'm many things that I thought I was. I was exactly those things and a lot more. And because I'm speaking from true life testimony, I can tell you that, as I was saying before, even the dream has pushed me to discover a lot more. Again, that the well is a lot deeper concerning who I am, what I can accomplish than I thought. And it's also, to be fair, taught me limits. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm saying it's taught me in a lot of ways what I do not like, the places I need to leverage myself in the future, because I may not be the greatest at all things and am not even interested in being the greatest at some of those things or even proficient, to be honest with you. It would be too out of the way of what I would need to personally focus on. And that's probably a whole conversation in and of itself, because I do believe that you have to be willing to do what you have to do until you can leverage it, as long as leveraging it is what you're open to and honestly know is a necessity through somebody else in the future. And by leveraging it, I mean hiring somebody else, expanding your operation that allows other people to come in and help you to help leverage whatever dream, whatever accomplishment, whatever goal you need to get up and running. So here's what I know, that many of you are a lot more than what you believe you are today. You may have inklings or feelings that you might be more, but knowledge has a cool word within it right at the front of it, and that's know. And I think and I know are two different things. And until you can step out on it and have a firm foundation, like a knowing, not I think I may be this, but I know I am this. It's been tried, it's been tested. I've tried this out for myself. I'm not the only one that knows I'm this. There's plenty of others who know that I'm this because it's a tried thing. You need to get into the know concerning every bit of who you are. And that's going to come by you taking action. So there's a lot of you that are many things that you don't know you are and are gifted in a lot of ways you may not know you are. And then there's some of you also, and a lot of you even, who think you may be something and are not particularly that thing. Your brain may be thinking in a general direction that the direction itself may not necessarily be off, but your conclusion, what you've narrowed yourself down to, may be completely wrong. And it may come out of a desire sometimes. And this is where we have to be investigative about our motives and things like that. A lot of times, if you want to just keep up with other people and do what everybody else is doing to fit into the crowd, and you're trying to prove your worth by showing you can do what somebody else can do, you'll oftentimes land yourself in a lot of positions that you don't belong, or assume that you are things that you are not. But again, it's not out of a genuine investigation into yourself and what you're skilled at. It's out of a need to appropriate to whatever you feel is popular, etc. All right, so there's a lot of you who definitely may not be and are not what you may think you are. And here's why it's important to get rid of the fear of failure and not be afraid to step out to again prove exactly what you are and are not, because you'll never get to the place of knowing. You can do a lot of I think your entire life and never come into I know by an unwillingness to step out into what you even think you may be. And you have to be okay with whatever the answer is. But no matter what you discover, my guarantee is that we all are more vast internally than we could ever imagine. And as we continue to grow, as we continue to journey, as we continue to wonder, as we continue to be open to the possibilities of ourselves, you may start off in one direction and again, maybe take the advice of a person who seemingly through their advice is concluding that you're only going to be one thing, right? For instance, as much as Warren Buffett is probably considered by most people to be one thing, which is an investor, I guarantee you that the well of who he is much deeper than that. And he's skilled at a lot more things. Trust me, it took a lot more skill than just reading about stocks, which would just mean he's garnered the ability to read, and based upon statistical facts, has learned to master the stock market and invest properly concerning the right time and things like that. There's so many avenues to him that we don't see on a regular basis and that he may not be widely known for. And I'm just using him for an example. But I guarantee you that the well of who he is a lot deeper than what we expect. And though you may start off in one direction and that bridge into a number of things, here's what I'm saying. What I've come to terms with in my life, and here's what I'm opening up for you, is that many of the things that I thought and knew I was earlier on, I'm not just one thing, I'm all of that. And some of you need to give yourself permission to be all of that. And that doesn't mean that you can't just attack one thing at one time or however you want to do it. If you want to compartmentalize and have something over here and have something over here and have something over there, all going at once, or if you want to somehow focus everything into one stream and try to accomplish whatever the dream or goal is that way, what I'm saying to you is that because I know we're all more than one thing, you're going to have to learn to be okay with the idea that I'm all of that. This is probably for a specific type of person who feels almost paralyzed because you feel like you're a multitude of things. Now, first of all, you need to step into the know by trying out the things that you feel like you are. And I guarantee you some of them are going to stick. Some of them won't stick like you feel like they will. You won't be probably as skilled as you think you are at certain things. And sometimes we can feel kindred to a lot of people who do things and we admire, but we may not do exactly what they do. But there's something about them that draws us to them. So for instance, if you are a person who enjoys Mariah Carey as a singer and there's something about her aura or something of the sort that kind of attracts you to her, you may assume that, wow, I feel kindred to her from a distance. And so maybe I'm a singer or I should do something like that. And truth be told, you may do something that lands you on stage, but may not be the exact thing that she does. All right. That's just a foundational example to say you need to step out and try it. Not everything will stick to you like you feel like it will. And then also at the same time, you'll discover a lot more about yourself and you might come across some different things that you didn't even know were there and some new pathways, some new avenues. But again, you need to begin to be comfortable with the idea that you're not just one thing. I'm all of that. You don't need to be paralyzed by feeling like I don't know what direction to go in because I feel like I may be so many things. Well, listen, you can either stand on the side and never find out if you're any of it or try things, lose the fear of failure, lose all of these fears that are preventing you and feeling like you're wasting time and things like that. The only way you're wasting time is if you're standing on the sideline, not getting into the game of living your dream and waiting for someone to maybe come along and tell you exactly who you are or what step you should take. I'm trying to prevent you from doing that because that's wasting time. Even if somebody had some type of insight and told you to go in a specific direction, you still need to take the action. And 9 times out of 10, it still won't go exactly the way you saw it in your head, even when you do it. The journey is a lot different than the thought of the journey. And you may not land exactly where you thought you would land. And this is not to say that it won't end up a lot better. I believe ultimately when a dream manifests in your life, it's going to happen in a way that your end result, again, when you are brave enough, when you're bold enough to begin to live the dream, life has more in store for you than you could ever imagine. So don't hear me saying this could end badly. I'm saying if you're committed to the process and are willing to walk out this dream and your call and your purpose, life has a multitude of things for you that you did not even see coming. And the result of it is going to be a lot better than you even think now. If you think you know what life has in store for you, you have no idea. It's going to be better than you ever thought possible. But again, as long as you're waiting on the sideline to know the exact right moves, you'll never find out what's really in you. And again, if you're the person that is afraid to make a move because there's so many things you feel like you could do, or even as you start walking out this dream, you feel like there's a multitude of things that you do well. And it may be true. I know there's a lot of things that I do well, but I've had to come to terms that whoever's idea that you should just succeed at one thing at one time and leave everything else aside and focus hard on one thing until you can grow it, whatever the advice, whichever way it comes, may not be the appropriate thing for me. I've had to realize that everything that I've discovered along the way, everything that I've thought that's been tried and tested and was actually true, I'm all of that. It's okay to be all of that. Don't allow even the thought of being more than one thing confuse you and stop you from actually stepping out. And first of all, coming into the know. And then once you know, don't allow it to paralyze your movements because you're afraid of a juggling act. Just accept it, figure out a way to be all of it. Trust me, there's a way. They say where there's a will, there's a way, right? And I believe it to be true. So figure it out, but just be okay with saying to yourself, I'm all of that. Don't allow anybody to limit you who may just be less talented, to be honest. And that's okay. Somebody might have one thing and they do it extremely well and can make a ton of money off of that one thing. And that's great. Wish them well and continue to be all that you are and press into all that you may be. I'm all of that. Be all of it. You don't have time to sit around and wait and try to let life tell you every single step and move to make. Listen, go be all of it. This is your moment. It's time now. You don't have a lot of time. You're wasting time sitting around trying to be one thing. Just go be all of it. I'm all of that. That's what you need to say.
Writer, producer, artist, coach, and inspirational motivational speaker, Brian Farr takes us on a deep, retrospective, and introspective journey ranging from his childhood until life today that invokes the question, will I live a life of significance or one of safety? Filled with experience-gained wisdom and revelatory insights, A New Home dares its readers to ask themselves the hard questions concerning their need to fit in. How far will you go? And will all the efforts you've made be worth it in the end? This perspective-shifting discourse is a must-read, and through its hard-hitting yet relatable, tear-jerking, and even at points comical nature may prove to be more of a life-changing event than just a good Sunday morning read. Get your physical copy today at becomingallthatweare.com.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this final episode. Again, I appreciate your support in every way that you're supporting. Share this out to whoever needs it and just share it because you never know who does need it. And as always, it's my desire through this that you be made prosperous. And until next time.